I'm here with Ranger Andy Brown. Today we're at Galena Creek Regional Park, which is in Washoe County, Nevada. For those who are not familiar with Nevada, we're on the northern and west side of Nevada, just south of Reno and just over the hill from Lake Tahoe. So Ranger Brown has been at this park for a while now, and he's going to share a little bit about the history of the park, why we're here, and what it's like to be a park ranger, and how you can maybe choose that field of career too. So I'll turn it over to Andy, and we'll keep it open at the end for questions and answers. So if you have a question, write it down, send it in the chat, and Ralph will get that to us today at the Q&A. Okay, Andy.
Hi, everyone. As Becky said, my name is Andy Brown. I'm a park ranger with Washoe County Regional Parks and Open Space in Reno, Nevada. And I'd like to welcome you to Galena Creek Regional Park. This is Washoe County's oldest regional park. And the building behind me here is a very special building. It's the whole reason why this park exists today. And we'll take a real quick tour of the building. We'll take a look at the outside of the building too, just to kind of point out some of the unique things about this old building. So this is the Galena Creek Fish Hatchery. It's a pretty iconic feature of the park. This old stone building was created with granite stones located right here on site, and it's got that round portal window in the chimney. It's immediately discernible from a distance. And go ahead and click next. And this plaque here is a historical marker. Talks about some of the history of the building, and I'll go into it a little bit right now. So why do we have a fish hatchery? What is a fish hatchery? A fish hatchery building like this, we had a few fish hatchery buildings in Washoe County when this one was originally built, and the purpose was to revitalize the area's fisheries following the Comstock mining era of the 1860s to early 1900s. And the purpose of this building was actually to raise the fish and to distribute those fish into local rivers and streams after that Comstock mining boom in Virginia City. The area became so populated in such a short amount of time that one of the things that they did to feed everyone was to fish the local rivers and streams. And unfortunately, they overdid it. They took too much of the habitat away. And we actually had suffered quite a bit of habitat damage because of the mining and the associated logging and things like that occurred in the park. Not just in the park itself, but the whole western or eastern slope of the Sierra. So where we are, we're midway between Reno and Lake Tahoe, up in the Sierra, and this whole area was involved with the Comstock mining boom. There were mines in the area. The park itself got its name from the creek, which got its name from the mineral lead sulfide. Go ahead and go to the next slide for me. We'll take a real quick peek on the inside of the building. There's a couple of unique things about the interior of the building that I wanted to point out. So the metal roof is fairly close to the original as far as the structure of the building when it was first constructed in 1931. The stone walls, they're actually not supporting the building. It's more of a facade now, and you see how the metal beams there are being supported by the posts around the room there. The windows are original to the building, and they have all been restored. And you'll see that stone fireplace that's in the corner. One unique thing that I'd like to point out is the pattern on the floor there, the carpet. You'll notice there's two different colors. And the darker color there represents where the rearing pond was inside of the building when it was originally in operation. Go ahead and hit the next. And there's another look at that fireplace. The fireplace wasn't actually original to the building, but I'll talk a little bit more about that as we continue. Go ahead and go to the next, please. So on the walls in the building, we've got some photos on display, and this group of photos kind of commemorates the popularity of sport fishing in the early 1900s. And so to talk about the history of this building, we really got to go way back in time. We're going to go a little bit further back than where we are now. We're talking about 1900, 1920. And this was a time when sport fishing was extremely popular. And go ahead and continue to the next, please. And you'll see the three pictures on the wall here. There were two main hatcheries that operated along the Truckee River, which is the main water source that goes from Lake Tahoe into Pyramid Lake. And I'll talk a little bit more about that and the Truckee River watershed as we continue on. Next slide, please. This is one of the rearing ponds at the historic Bird Eye Fish Hatchery, which is actually no longer in existence today. Go ahead and go to the next. So going way back in time, this area was originally inhabited by the Washoe Indians, Paiute Shoshone tribe, and they populated the entire area surrounding Lake Tahoe. Going into about 1859, there were gold discoveries nearby. I talked about Virginia City and the Comstock mining boom that really started to take off at about 1859, 1860. And in 1860, there were a lot of folks out exploring, and gold and precious mineral exploration, gold and silver specifically, were extremely popular, and it was a competitive thing. And so people were branching out. They were looking for new territories to get rich and find the next gold strike or silver strike. And so 1860, the town of Galena was constructed nearby, just down the creek from us. And they constructed a stamp mill and several lumber mills. And their idea was to create almost a second Virginia City on this side of the valley. And unfortunately, it didn't really work out for them too much because of the aforementioned galena, the lead sulfide. It was unfortunately, it was attached to a lot of the minerals that they were extracting from the ground, and it made it extremely difficult to make any sort of profit off of the gold or silver ore that they were excavating because of the processes and the technology just wasn't there. So they had unfortunately had to abandon a lot of that plan, and they turned their resources to processing a lot of the ore from the Virginia City mines. And in return, they were capitalizing on a lot of the local resources here. So they cut a lot of the timber down, and a lot of that ended up going downstream. And there were flumes and wagon teams and trains and all kinds of things used to transport all of these materials up into Virginia City. And a lot of that ends up underground and still exists there today. Go ahead and hit the next slide for me. This is a pretty iconic shot. This is one of the photos on the wall in the building, and that is of the incline, as it's called. It was a narrow gauge railway that exists. Remnants of it still exist today in Incline Village on the north side of Lake Tahoe, and so a lot of the hillsides looked a lot like that. They were stripped pretty bare, and a lot of that timber was sent to Virginia City. Go ahead and hit that next slide for me. So that was one thing that was kind of an unfortunate side effect or byproduct of the westward expansion and specifically the Comstock era. With a lot of the habitat destruction that occurred, and a lot of the old growth trees no longer exist. Many of the trees that you see around us here in the park today, these are second growth. And so these would have been trees that had come up following that time period. So many of them are probably approaching about 80 to 100 years old now. Go ahead and hit the next slide for me. And this is an example of one of those log flumes that I was talking about. So Galena Creek and several of the other creeks nearby, they were dammed up, and they had these flumes constructed in order to use the waters to transport the logs across country or downstream or into lakes where they were then sent to the lumber mills. Go ahead and hit the next one, please. And that is what Galena looks like. So it's a very shiny metallic rock, but it's a lead sulfide, and it's associated with a lot of things in the ground where you have a lot of quartz, and we have quartz all around us. Granite is composed of mostly quartz, and so it's pretty common to find little bits of that stuff, and maybe even big bits if you decided to go out and go panning on the stream on your own. It's a very common material to find around here. Go ahead and hit the next one. So you might be asking yourself, Ranger Andy, why would they build this building on the side of a mountain, far away from civilization? And what was the purpose of putting it here? So this is a map of our river, Truckee River watershed. And if you look in the kind of the bottom left corner there, you'll see the mountain there, Mount Rose, and we're just below it there. We're pretty near the top of the Truckee River watershed in this part of the valley. The watershed's it's a pretty big area. You kind of see in the top left the representation of the river itself flowing from Lake Tahoe to Pyramid Lake. It's a pretty unique river system because like all of the other river systems in the Great Basin, and unlike many in the world, actually, our river doesn't flow to an ocean. So we've got the river starting around Lake Tahoe and then ends in a lower elevation lake, Pyramid Lake. And so everything that happens in the watershed is extremely important and consequential to everything else downstream. So you see all this white stuff behind me. And so we've received quite a bit of snow recently, and that actually gives me an opportunity to talk about why this building would exist right here. So Galena Creek was known to be a constant source of uncontaminated water, and that's an extremely important element when you're raising fish. They need that really clean water, and we're high enough up, from the rest of civilization that a lot of the contaminants that you would have found in the river systems and the streams doesn't really affect the water up here as much, but it was extremely cold. Go ahead and hit the next one for me. So that's kind of a blown up representation, if you will. So you'll see California to the west. Lake Tahoe is actually split by Nevada and California. And so we're just above Reno and Sparks there. And we're on the western edge of the Great Basin. Go ahead and hit the next one for me. And another really unique thing about this spot in particular So Reno's a pretty arid place. It can be. Our annual precip is around 7 inches a year, and that's an average. So we have years where we see far less than that, and we definitely have years where we've seen a lot more than that. We're geographically pretty close to Lake Tahoe, where they see an average of about 30 inches or more a year. So right about where we're at, we receive quite a bit of precip in the form of snow, and so that kind of determines what the natural features are like. We have a alpine forest surrounding us, thanks to all of this moisture that we receive, and not too far from here. It's more of a sagebrush and lower vegetation, right on the edge of the Great Basin Desert, where it's an extremely arid place. We're right on the edge of what's called the rain shadow effect, and a lot of the storms that come over the ridge from the Sierra, they'll end up dropping a lot of their precipitation on the west side of the mountain into California, but quite a bit of that makes it just over the ridge and just touches us barely to where we can replenish that Truckee River watershed. So after the Comstock mining era ended, a lot of the territory around here was pretty barren. There was still, some trees and the habitat was, there was still habitat here. It just looked a lot different, and it was more pastoral. So we saw a lot more things like cattle grazing occurring, and the few folks that survived the many calamities, the several fires that the town of Galena suffered between 1860 and 1867, they stuck around after that, and they continued on to raise cattle and other livestock in the area. And that takes us to about the early part of the 19th century. So a lot of you might recognize that structure in that photo there. That's the Hoover Dam, originally known as the Boulder Dam, right? And one of the things that this place has in common with that immense structure is the group that constructed it. So the fish hatchery was built in 1931, and it operated for about 18 years until about 1949. During that time period, we saw a lot of things occur in the park, and one in particular that's mentionable is the encampment here of the Work Progress Administration and the Civilian Conservation Corps. Those two groups were Depression era programs that were put in place by President Franklin Roosevelt following the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl, and a lot of those programs put men to work, and they built a lot of the nation's infrastructure during that time period. The Hoover Dam is a great example, but also several things of note here in the park. Go ahead and hit the next one for me. So Galena Creek Park was established not as a park itself, but the fish hatchery being built in 1931. This area was deeded to Washoe County by one of those previous cattle ranching families in the area in 1931, and they built the fish hatchery. And then soon after, the Civilian Conservation Corps came in, and they constructed a few other things. They built a 5-meter ski jump, and that other stone building that you see in the photo there, that's actually the park headquarters today. It's called Stone House, and it was originally built as a warming hut for that ski run. The ski run was a pretty resorts as we do today, and so that was a pretty popular attraction. Our university actually used it as kind of like their home practice for skiing and jumping. A lot of the other things that were built in the park still exist. It's kind of a testament to the Civilian Conservation Corps' work, in conservation, and in a lot of the parks that you'll visit, national parks, state parks, you'll see a lot of examples of the CCC's work. And go ahead and hit the next slide for me. One of the other things that you'll find when you're exploring the park are these concrete structures with these metal boxes on them, and you're probably wondering what those are all about. Those were the earliest picnic sites in the park, and those would have been constructed in the late 1930s, early 1940s. The group of CCC men that were here, they worked in this area from 1935 to 1941 or so, and they constructed a lot of different things that we still use today, like phone lines going up into Lake Tahoe. That was one of their big projects. Go ahead and hit the next one for me. And so this is what it would have looked like around 1945 if you came out to picnic in the park. This has been an extremely popular place for recreation, and it's actually Washoe County's earliest representation of their commitment to recreation. There was a trend going back into the 1920s of combining conservation, habitat conservation with recreation. And so everything we have around us was thanks to the Victory Highway administration, and they provided the funding as they were building that highway system in the mid-20s out west. And they contribute a lot of money to building these conservation habitat and recreation sites like this. So the park was a pretty busy place from sundown to sunset, pretty much any given day until 1940s, 1950s. You know, people were coming up and camping, and it's always been a really popular spot for recreation. So go ahead and hit the next one for me. And this kind of takes us into the next chapter. Camp Galena was the original name of the Civilian Conservation Corps camp, and that theme kind of extended into the next life, if you will, of the park. So in 1958, following a few years of the fish hatchery being used from, let's see, 1949 was the last year the hatchery was in operation. So between 49 and 58, we saw a few things happen. The Boy Scouts actually used it for activities, and we also saw the Sierra Archers and the Washoe Bowmen set up archery range, and they used it for a lot of their activities. 1958, the 40 acres of the park that the fish hatchery exists on was sold to the Sierra Campfire Girls, and the Campfire Girls operated a summer camp up here from 1958 until the early 90s. Go ahead and hit the next one for me. This was a photo dating back to probably the early, late 50s, early 60s of a group of Campfire Girls huddled up next to the fireplace in there. That fireplace was constructed actually by the Boy Scouts in about 1956 or 7, right before they ended their use of the building. And during the time when the Campfire Girls were using it, they would use it for various things like arts and crafts. They actually did use it as a barracks for a little while, and you can see they're holding up. They're very proud of their little medals that they've all worked so hard to achieve. If you could hit the next one for me. And one thing that was great about the summer camps was it taught these younger girls all the way from ages 7 until about high school age. They learned a lot of useful skills and a lot of relationships and team building, and just like you would think of the Parent Trap, the Haley Mills movie from the 50s. It was very much like that with summer camp up here.
Should we get through the next couple ones real quick?
Yeah. Go ahead and hit the next one for me. And that's kind of talk, talks or displays the what it would have looked like attending a summer camp here.
Life.
Yeah, camp life. The next one's a really cool one. So Maryland's Pond nearby. The pond was a very useful recreation site going way back until its early existence, and it was a really popular for fishing And
Next.
the next one is a picture of a canoe on the water. And go ahead and hit the next one for me. So that one there, that's actually another CCC structure that was built that was turned into a ceremonial spot, if you will, for the Campfire Girls. And they would have like it was like the last day of camp. They would all get together and they would have like a goodbye ceremony. And so that's what this picture was of that goodbye ceremony, just getting started there. And go ahead and hit the next one for me. And so they were here year round, actually. This is a good shot of them having a good old fashioned snowball fight, probably on a day just like today. Eventually the camp would expand. Go ahead and hit the next one for me. And other buildings would be constructed so that they could expand their camp. And this one's probably about the same time period, late 50s, early 60s. And eventually, go ahead and hit the next one for me. They would go on to build another big structure in the park that's known as Camp Weechemy. And that building was used for a number of years until the early 90s, when Washoe County eventually reacquired all of the land here, the 40 acres that the lodge and the fish hatchery sit on today. So you probably wonder what would have come of the fish hatchery. Go ahead and hit the next one for me. So these next couple kind of display, you know, what the fish hatchery would have looked like when Washoe County reacquired it in 1994. It was pretty run down, and unfortunately, anything around here that isn't well maintained or taken care of, the elements start to take it back. And so there was a lot of work to do to restore the building. Go ahead and hit the next one for me. And so you can kind of see those original windows. They were all busted up. It was kind of a sad state for the hatchery to be in. And fortunately, though, beginning that year and lasting until about 2007, about $2.5 million was spent to restore both of these two buildings into their, go ahead and hit the next one, to their present day glory. We had a big opening event in 2007, and we've opened this building up to community groups, and we'll see several different types of events occur here. It's a very popular spot for weddings and family gatherings, but we'll even host, go ahead and hit the next one, we'll even host interpretive programs here occasionally. This was one that we hosted last summer. That's President Theodore Roosevelt actually talking about his trials and tribulations with being the longest president of the United States. And go ahead and hit that next one for me. So I really hope that you have a chance to come and visit us at some point in the future, and please experience the park. It's different every season of the year. It's a really pretty place, summer, spring, winter, and fall.
All right, Ralph, do you want to, oh, there we are. Thank you, Andy, for that great presentation. So a little bit before we open it up real quick for Q&As. So you might ask, like, so at the Science Center, I try to bring virtual field trips from across the state, and I became interested in this park with bringing my own children up here last summer. So the park does host, through the Great Basin Institute, a summer camp so that my children was able to participate in that. And then I was like, this would be the perfect space for a virtual field trip. So also today, so if we talk a little bit about today, people can come to the park. You can go fishing. I know I've seen people fishing, right? So tell people, if they wanted to come fishing, what do they have to do to come fishing?
Well, so the pond is actually, it's frozen recently.
Oh yeah, it's snow right now.
The pond just recently frozen, so it probably won't be fishable again until early April or so. But
you get a fishing
you can get
license?
you can get a fishing license or permit from the Nevada Department of Wildlife, and anybody can go out there and catch a fish. It's an extremely popular place for fishing, especially for young ones, and it's a great place to learn to fish. And if you're under the age of 12, you actually don't even need a fishing license or permit. Just bring your parent or grandparent with you.
So how did you become a ranger? Like, what did you study, or what was your path to becoming a ranger?
Well, that's a great question. So my path to becoming a ranger, it's kind of a conventional story, I guess. I worked as a seasonal park employee for a number of years, and that's how many people get into this type of work. And we hire park aides still today. And my philosophy on that is it's a great way to get experience doing this type of work, and you get to figure out if you're cut out for doing this before you actually commit to doing it full time. I did attend college here locally, and I actually got a job working in regional parks and open space in a different role, different capacity, and worked in that role for a number of years before the opportunity opened up here.
And what year did you become the ranger here?
So I've been the ranger at Galena Creek since about 2016.
So it's been here for a while.
Yeah. Before that, I worked at another park nearby called Bartley Ranch Regional Park. And I've got about 20 years experience now with Washoe County working in parks.
All right. So any last words before we open it up to the questions, or you want to see what they have to ask you?
I just want to say thank you to everyone for taking me, visiting with me today and joining me on my tour around the fish hatchery. And I hope you learned something new. And with that, I'll take any questions that you might have.
Absolutely. I've already gotten some messaged and emailed, and guys, keep them coming. If you guys have any questions for Ranger Andy or Becky. Ranger Andy, some of the students want to know, what is your favorite part about your job? Like what you get to do every day?
My favorite part of this job and what I get to do every day is different. What I do as a ranger can drastically change from one day to the next. Most of the time, we spend a lot of time just walking and talking to people and being a resource and a helpful source of information and answering questions. And we do a lot of educating. So rangers actually have quite a bit in common with teachers, but also quite a bit in common with police and firemen and paramedics, because we do things like keep people safe in the park, from the park itself, or maybe from other people. We also keep the park itself safe from visitors or from other natural things. So it's a pretty unique and rewarding job.
How far are you guys from where the cabins are?
So we're not too far. You could, if it wasn't for all the trees in the background, you might be able to see the Camp Weechemy area. A lot of the little cabins that were built associated with that, fortunately, they were torn down because they all suffered from what we call Galena up here. Everything has to be Galena proof, and to me that means being able to sustain these really harsh winters that we have. And a lot of those cabins were unfortunately collapsed in about the early 1980s. That's when they built the lodge, and they were able to continue their summer camp program. So, and for anyone who is interested in attending a summer camp, it's a beautiful place to do it. The Great Basin Institute operates their camp for usually about 6 or 7 weeks every summer.
And for students who are interested in working outside, because that's obviously a big part of your career, what kind of advice would you have for them as far as things they should study in middle school and high school, and maybe even in college, to pursue a career path similar to yours?
I recommend anything that inspires you to learn more about nature. That's a big part of this. Everything that I do in a roundabout way, it all ties back into natural conservation in some way or another. And so, yeah, learn about your outdoor environment. Go join a junior ranger program, or maybe attend a guided hike or some other free program in a park, or just go explore on your own. There's a lot of free resources out there. We actually have our own junior ranger guide that you can get from our website, and many places like the state parks. Nevada State Parks has a great junior ranger resource, and the national parks as well. So there are definitely a lot of ways to get the inspiration that you would need. Also, volunteering in your community is also a great way to become involved too. We host a lot of joint cleanup efforts with local nonprofits that specialize in doing park cleanups and things like that. So that's a good way to learn about how these places, how the ins and outs, and also, feel free to come and talk to a ranger and ask us, if you have a million questions that that just occur to you after this, I'm just an email or phone call away.
We have a couple more student questions, then we'll let you go because we know it's getting kind of late for the kids over in Eastern Europe. One of the kids wants to know, what are some of the animals that you've encountered in your career? In the wild, of course.
In the wild. Well, Galena Creek itself, this is a pretty wild place. And I've actually encountered several black bears here. In North America, we have two different types primarily of bears. We've got grizzly bears and we've got black bears. And Nevada doesn't have a grizzly bear population. We have pretty much all black bears around here, even though they vary in color from like a blonde to like a cinnamon or dark, kind of like dark espresso color. So I've had several experiences with black bears. I've also not at super close range, but I've also encountered mountain lions and bobcats, and we'll also see a lot of mule deer and other large mammals, lots of birds, lots of raptors and other little predators. I actually have two the local snake species in my office. I've got a terrarium with a gopher snake and a rubber boa that are two of our more locally prevalent snake species. So I've got quite a bit of experience with wildlife.
Yeah, it sounds like it. One of the kids wants to know, or this is actually one of the classes, they want to know, what kind of equipment do you get to work with throughout your career?
That's a great question. Being a park ranger is actually like being a really big kid in a lot of ways, because we get a lot of really cool toys. One of the things that I operate quite a bit in this park, just because of where I am, I'm in a pretty unique place. Not a lot of the other parks experience this type of weather, but I have a tractor and a snow plow that I get to operate. We also map and compass, that sort of thing, just out exploring. There's a whole range of equipment, chainsaws and all kinds of fun and scary things. But it is really like being a really big kid sometimes.
That is very exciting. And Ranger Andy and Becky, we can't thank you guys enough for connecting with us today. This was so much fun. It looks absolutely freezing where you guys are at.
It's 24 degrees, 24 Fahrenheit. That's -4 Celsius.
It looks freezing. So I'm glad I'm in the southern part of the state right now. So thank you everyone for
your time too. We appreciate
Yes, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Becky. Thank you, Ranger Andy. Anyone who's on here, we have another learning event coming up in about 20 minutes with the United States Navy and the USS Constitution, which is the oldest floating ship in the world. They're going to give us a tour of their ship. Feel free to register. It's in the chat. And so Ranger Andy and Ranger Becky, Ranger Andy and Becky, before we let you go, I'm going to unmute everyone, and can we all say thank you for spending their time with us today. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate you, and we hope everyone is healthy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye.